we have taken on the insane challenge of taking this Lamborghini Diablo kit car, dropping it onto a BMW E36 chassis, and attempting to build an absolutely wild drift car.
And in just a couple of short weeks, we've made some absolutely awesome progress on this thing. We officially got the shell bolted onto the BMW chassis, we installed coilovers, as well as an aftermarket angle kit, and we got the front wheels fitting absolutely beautifully. And this thing officially rolls on all 4 wheels.
Which is a huge milestone for this build.
We definitely have a bit of work on our hands in terms of the rear fitment, but I do have a couple of ideas so that we can get that sitting absolutely perfect. And as you can see here, I've gone ahead and test fitted the rear bumper for the first time, and how good does that look? The rear bumper definitely makes the rear end look a lot more complete, and I'm already starting to get ideas for where we're going to run our exhaust on the rear end.
But I'm definitely getting ahead of myself there because we have a whole lot more work before we even start to think about an exhaust.
So now that we have the shell mounted, it's time to start thinking about the next jobs on the list.
So my friends at Chimera Development are coming in next week to 3D scan the inside of our car so they can start sorting out the roll cage for this thing, because we are going absolutely next level on that. And I cannot wait for you guys to see the plans that we have for this roll cage. We're cooking up something spicy.
But in order for them to come in and 3D scan the interior, we actually need to have a driver's seat in place so that they can build the roll cage around that. And for that to happen, we need the steering wheel in the proper position for where it's gonna be when we're driving the car. Currently, it's basically touching the roof, and that is absolutely not going to work for us.
So Woz and I have spent many hours in the shop here just staring at this thing and coming up with a plan.
And what we've decided to do is we're gonna cut out this whole firewall, remove the steering column, and start from scratch.
Although it's a big job and a really daunting task, the current firewall
has a bunch of holes in it anyway, and it would be a lot of work even just patching up those holes, to the point where we may as well put that effort into going and building a new firewall.
That way we can have it looking super tidy and exactly the way that we want it.
So our first task in this video, we're gonna pull the shell off the chassis once again and cut out this firewall. Shell is off the chassis once again. Look how cool this looks. The amount of work we've done on this already really shows when you lift the shell off. Right now, we are ready to cut up the firewall and everything. So basically what we're gonna do, this is gonna go, all of this metal up here is gonna go, and obviously we're gonna pull the steering column out. We're gonna see if we can possibly modify the stock steering column to cut and shut it.
Before we go any further, I wanted to let you guys know that I have launched memberships on the channel now for $3.99 a month. I wanted to keep it really cheap and affordable for you guys, but it's a great way for you guys to help support the channel, and I'm putting everything I have into it. But basically $3.99 gets you into a private Discord server chat with me and all of the other members, where you can share your own builds, your own ideas, ask questions. We also do members only live streams, and I'm gonna send every member out a members only sticker as well to your address. Join the crew, come chat, and yeah, I appreciate you guys so much.
All right, back to work, and time to remove the steering column so we can chop out the firewall. And you know what they say? It's always better when you double team it.
Hey! So the firewall is out, and there really is now not much left of this BMW E36. But there's just enough of it left where we're gonna still maintain the characteristics of the car as a drift car, suspension-wise, geometry-wise.
But everything else is gone so that we can actually fit the shell on properly.
It actually looks really cool like this, and I think we should just leave the shell.
I know, but this is everything that we have to work with now. So we left the steering column mount because basically that's like the perfect place for it at the moment to bolt up to our steering shaft, because obviously we're maintaining all this and keeping it. But now we can put the shell back onto the chassis, and we can go ahead and start figuring out where we're going to put the seat in the car, and that's the big thing.
Exciting part, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, sit in it. And you know what I just realized? We'll be able to correct the issue that you always have when the seat doesn't sit in the center. Any BMW guys know that when you put a fixed back seat in your car, no matter what you do, you can't get it close enough to the gearbox tunnel to actually sit in the center of the steering wheel, so you always sit offset.
But we can kind of dictate everything. We can dictate where the seat goes, we can dictate where the steering wheel goes.
So the shell is now back on the chassis, and then went on pretty much without a hitch, which is a big relief. And
it looks so much cooler now without the firewall, because it's starting to look a little more real, I guess. The firewall made it look a little bit janky. And now we can move on to the interior stuff, and that is
the seat, the dash.
Yeah. We have the dash here. Basically, I got all the parts with this kit. But as you can probably see just by looking at this is a left-hand drive dash. So we have some modifications we need to do.
Mike's got a lot of fiberglassing to do.
Yeah, I'm not excited about it one single bit. That's some future jobs for future Mike, but we're gonna test fit the dash because we need to start figuring out where everything's going to go. So the next thing we're doing, we'll put the dash in, then we're gonna put the steering column in and measure how much we need to cut the steering column down.
So we threw the steering column back in the car and measured exactly how much we needed to shorten it by, which was 240 millimeters. Then we stripped the steering column down and marked exactly where we needed to cut and began expertly cutting the pipe.
That was clamped well.
Whoops.
Okay, maybe not expertly cutting, but we got the job done in the end and tacked it all together.
Ow! It like jumped over and went onto my ass. So our cut and shut steering column is all tacked up. And we're actually really happy with it. Like, it worked super well. We worked really hard on making sure that it's actually nice and straight. Using the bandsaw really helped with that. It's all nice and straight, it rotates nicely.
Time to fit the fiberglass dash into the car for the first time,
It looks so good.
That's sick.
along with these crazy seats that came with the kit.
We'll get them fully upholstered, foam, everything like that, so they won't look like this when they're done. But I'm kind of pumped that the kit actually came with all the seats and everything because we are going to end up using them.
Fitting the seats into the BMW chassis is going to be a mammoth task in itself, as the seating position is crucial in such a tight space. But for now, we dummy fit them and it's time to sit in the car for the very first time.
Oh my god. Impossible, literally.
It's gonna be there somewhere.
Yeah, it's about there. That's good. I think we nailed the steering wheel placement.
Yeah, it kind of looks alright. What's your vision like?
Yeah, fine, especially because this is bigger diameter than what we're going to be using. So we're going to be using a slightly smaller two-step garage suede wheel. That's pretty sick. Especially because the steering column that we've done is definitely going to work. So after much awkward kind of shuffling around in the car, we have our seating position somewhat dialed.
And this is how it looks with the door closed. So the seating position is somewhat about here. Steering wheel is about here. It's not too bad from the side of the car. I don't mind it too much.
It's definitely always going to be like a little bit awkward figuring this stuff out just because obviously it's not the chassis that this shell belongs on.
But I must say, it does look pretty freaking cool with the dash sitting in and starting to make things look a little bit more complete.
But we're going to wrap up for tonight and come back tomorrow morning. Outside of this roller door right here is the car that has the motor that we're going to steal to put into this Lamborghini Diablo drift car project. But I'll see you guys bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the morning for a lot more hard work.
Say goodbye, Nathan. Bye.
Bye. Dude, that is so good. So we're back for another day of Lamborghini goodness. So we've got the Lamborghini kit car shell, we've got the BMW chassis, and now we're about to introduce another car manufacturer into the equation.
This is the Mazda RX-8. Introduced in 2003, it represents the evolution of Mazda's iconic rotary engine lineage. At the heart of the RX-8 is the 13B Renesis rotary engine. It's a 1.3 litre powerhouse that revs up to 9,000 RPM, delivering around 238 horsepower in the manual variant.
That goes hard as.
About 9.5.
Now you guys know we're putting the 13B turbo into the Lambo build, but I'm sure this engine choice is a little bit controversial for a bunch of you guys in the chat.
So the 13B Renesis motor is not exactly everyone's favorite rotary motor,
Definitely.
but it's within our budget.
Yes, they are very cheap, especially nowadays, and it will still make all the noises correctly.
Yes.
You're right.
So obviously I don't have unlimited money, but I really wanted to put a rotary into the Lambo. Then a friend of mine, Shane, messaged me and said, hey, I've got this RX-8 sitting here. It's manual, 6-port, so it's the good motor, and it's had a fresh rebuild by a very reputable company called ProMaz. Essentially, the plan is we're going to pull the engine and gearbox out of this car today, strip everything down. We're gonna run a standalone ECU on it, and of course, we're gonna run a turbo on it. Custom intake manifold, custom turbo manifold.
All right, enough talk. Time to back the RX-8 onto the hoist, grab our SP tools and get to work. We start by removing the exhaust and immediately we got distracted.
Just quickly, while we have the exhaust off this thing, we thought it'd be rude not to start it up and see how it sounds with literally just the headers on the 13B. I'm pretty scared for my eardrums right about now. Like a tractor.
My left eardrum is ringing. That's insane.
It might be a lot quieter in the car. That doesn't sound awesome.
Back to work, and we removed the drive shaft and the huge gearbox mount that goes all the way back to the diff. Then it was onto the engine bay to remove everything in our way.
It's actually crazy once you remove all of the intake stuff, how much room there is in this engine bay. The engine is all the way back here. That's the front of the motor.
But the motor is ready to come out of the hole, so let's lift it out.
So the worst thing about these RX-8 motors is the way that they look.
Luckily for us, we're basically using nothing on this engine other than the engine itself.
So we're gonna be doing a custom intake manifold. So we're gonna remove all of this, and we're doing a fully custom turbo manifold. So I've already removed the headers off the motor.
So right now, we're gonna tear this motor down to the bare block. Then I think we can sit it in the engine bay of the Lamborghini. So freaking exciting.
Summoning some of that kamikaze energy to get this thing stripped. Let's go blue raspberry.
Cheers. Whew. Man, that is actually so good. Underneath all of that crap is a beautiful 13B rotary engine. Now, one really cool thing is my friends at Night Ride are using the exact same motor in Merrick's Lada, which is pretty cool. So we're both using the Renesis motor. They're staying naturally aspirated, but we are going
to fit a turbo up to our 13B. And this is a Garrett 3582 turbo.
I have done a bunch of research on the internet, and a bunch of people have run these turbos with the exact same rear housing and run them really well. They make full boost by about 3,500 RPM, which is really low in a rotary considering we'll be revving this to 9,000 plus RPM.
I've still got a whole bunch of cleaning up I want to do on this motor. 13B, so good. But what I want to do first is dummy fit this in the car.
So we're going to lift the shell off the chassis and slide the motor in the front.
And of course we're going to use a little YouTube magic to speed the process up. Woohoo! Look at that. I still can't get over that every time I take the shell off. It looks so freaking cool. But the best part about not having a front or anything on the car is how easy it is to slot the engine in place and kind of get an idea of how we're going to build the engine mounts and everything.
And so we begin the shuffling act of putting the engine in the car for the first time. I usually go into these situations with zero planning and hope for the best, and 60% of the time it works every time. Luckily for us, this was one of those times, and this thing fit like a frickin' glove.
And just like that, we officially have a rotary-powered Lamborghini BMW thingy-majiggy.
So that went in relatively easy without any dramas, just as we suspected it would because it's so small. Now, one thing I have done is remove the alternator from the top of the motor here. We're actually going to relocate that to where the air conditioning bracket was on the side. A, because it was sticking out through the bonnet, which looks silly, but B, it's really ugly on the top. It's one thing I don't like about these Renesis motors, but as it sits currently, it's just gonna clear everything on the bonnet, and that's sitting on a 20mm plank of wood sitting off the subframe. So currently right now, the height of the engine is probably gonna be the height that it lives at. Bearing in mind, we still have to have some kind of intake manifold coming over the top here, and down the side here, we're going to have our turbo manifold, and I have our turbo here sitting on an axle stand just so we can kind of get an idea of the placement of perhaps where the turbo is going to sit.
Bailey is gonna be making the turbo manifold for us because I am just not a good enough fabricator and I don't trust myself with it. it.
But how freaking wild does that look? It's so perfect, I reckon, in that engine bay. It looks so good. Down the back here, as you can see, we now have a kind of idea of how we're going to build out the Firewall based on the placement of the motor. I did sit in the car and we kind of tested where we'd like the shifter to be. That's pretty much going to be spot on. And as for the Firewall, we'll basically build it out from here, kind of backwards, around and forwards, and that should be super neat and tidy, and then we'll build out the gearbox tunnel to meet the Firewall.
But all in all, I'm really happy with how that has all come together, and honestly, I didn't really think we were actually going to get the motor sitting in the bay in this video.
I'm sure heaps of you guys have your thoughts and opinions about how all of this is going to come together, and I'd love you guys to throw them in the comments below, because I literally read every single comment and I take all of your advice into account throughout the build.
The next steps for this build is basically going to be building our engine mounts, building the Firewall, building the gearbox mounts, and getting this thing officially situated in the car so we can start building everything around it. And of course, we need to make a start on the chassis fab as well and start putting metal back into it, because we've cut so much out of it. But that is the end of this video, guys, and I'm really happy with the progress we've made so far. Look at that. This thing is going to be an absolute weapon when it's done. Thank you guys so much, as always, for the support on the build. Remember, the memberships are now live, $3.99 a month. Support the channel, jump into the chat room. It's going to be a good time. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace! Rotary powered turbo Lamborghini. You can't beat it. Bye.